Imagine a land steeped in history, a crossroads of civilizations where empires clashed and faiths were born. This is Canaan, a name whispered in ancient texts and etched into the soil of Palestine. Canaan holds secrets of the past, from the first settled communities to the rise and fall of kingdoms. The land itself is a character in this epic story. Bronze Age cities emerge from rugged hills, fertile valleys cradle the footsteps of patriarchs, and the echoes of forgotten languages linger in the wind. But who were the Canaanites, those original inhabitants? Were they artisans famed for their purple dyes, or simply ancestors of the Israelites, painted as foes by biblical scribes? That, dear viewer, is the tale we'll unravel together. Stay with us to discover the mysteries that lie buried beneath the sands of Canaan. The land of Canaan is a place out of time, a crossroads where empires once clashed and ancient whispers still linger in the air. The very name Canaan holds secrets. Some believe it honors a man from biblical stories. Others point to the rich purple dyes that made the region famous. Historians still puzzle over its exact meaning and borders, but we know Canaan covered a vast swath of the Middle East, encompassing modern-day Lebanon, Syria, Jordan, and Israel. Imagine going back thousands of years, right around the ancient city of Jericho. The very first seeds of civilization are taking root. A small community builds walls, a testament to their ingenuity. Centuries later, during the Bronze Age, more cities spring up, teeming with trade and bustling markets. But for reasons unknown, these cities are abandoned, their inhabitants scattering. For a while, it seems like progress has stalled. Yet the story doesn't end there. The Middle Bronze Age sees Canaan blossom again. Now they're known as Phoenicia, famed for their exquisite dyes and trade with faraway lands like Egypt. This golden age crashes to a halt around 1250 BCE, a mysterious event historians call the Bronze Age collapse. Some biblical stories claim the Israelites, led by the warrior Joshua, swept in, conquering Canaan. But modern scholars aren't so sure. The exact reason for Canaan's downfall remains a mystery. What we know for sure is that the Israelites did settle in the region, establishing the kingdoms of Israel and Judah. But the land of Canaan remains a coveted prize. Empires rise and fall with bewildering speed. Assyrians, Babylonians, Persians, even Alexander the Great and his armies march across its soil. Finally, the mighty Roman Empire swallows Canaan whole. Throughout these centuries of upheaval, something else takes root in Canaan. Faiths that will shape the world. The echoes of this rich and turbulent history still resonate in the region's ruins, a testament to the land where the past refuses to be forgotten. Let's go back in time, before 10,000 BCE, even before the walls of Jericho rise. The earliest inhabitants of Canaan were nomadic, living off the land, leaving only faint traces of their existence. By the early Bronze Age, around 3500 BCE, things started to change. Permanent settlements spring up. Animal husbandry takes root. But Canaan's unforgiving landscape, dry and stubborn, made farming a struggle. Trade, however, was a lifeline, even before 2000 BCE. These early Canaanites left little behind. No grand buildings, no clear religious system. They were a people in progress, still finding their identity. Yet their destiny was intertwined with mighty empires. Around 2300 BCE, Sargon the Great, conqueror of the Akkadian Empire, swept across Canaan, bringing it briefly under his rule. Trade flourished. Pottery became their calling card. Then, as empires rose and fell, Canaan's cities mysteriously emptied. People returned to simpler ways, perhaps because those bustling cities had strained the land too far. But this dark age wouldn't last forever. The Middle Bronze Age, around 2000 BCE, saw a Canaanite revival. Cities bloomed again, and something revolutionary emerged. An early version of the Phoenician alphabet, a tool that would change the very way people communicated. Trade networks buzzed, but this time with a twist. Egypt, though geographically closer, now rivaled Mesopotamia for influence in Canaan. You can even see this in the way they buried their dead. Some tombs mirrored Egypt, others Mesopotamian styles. Canaanite merchants, especially those from the port city of Byblos, grew wealthy dealing with Egypt. This was their golden age. But the good times wouldn't last. Around 1725 BCE, a new force arrived. The Hyksos. Historians debate their origins, but they set up shop in Egypt and eventually ruled it. Ahmose I, an Egyptian prince, didn't take kindly to this. He kicked the Hyksos out of Egypt and chased them all the way through Canaan. Cities burned in his wake, a brutal reminder of Egypt's newfound power. To keep foes at bay, Ahmose transformed Egypt into an empire, with Canaan as a well-guarded territory. It was a mixed blessing. Egyptian dominance brought through stability, but also submission. Egypt's kings, Hatshepsut, Thutmose III, and even the legendary Ramesses the Great, all left their mark on Canaan. Yet under their watchful eye, trouble brewed. The Habiru, mysterious outsiders, roamed the land, causing unrest. Some once thought they were the early Hebrews, but that theory has been cast aside. Things took a chaotic turn around 1300 BCE. Across the Near East, empires clashed. Assyrians, Hittites, Egyptians, all fighting for control. Then, around 1250 BCE, disaster struck Canaan. Cities crumbled. The Bible says it was Joshua and his Israelite army, but archaeologists aren't entirely convinced. Whatever the cause, Canaan was forever changed. But from this destruction, something new would emerge. The Canaanites weren't just a blip on history's map. They were a people who laid the foundation for the civilizations that followed. Their story stretches way back, all the way to the mid-3rd millennium BCE, with their very name, Canaan, echoing across thousands of years. But here's the interesting part. The name Canaanite may have started with the Greeks. They traded with the Canaanites for vibrant purple cloth, dyed from shellfish found along the coast. The word for this color in Greek? Phoenix, meaning crimson or purple. They called the Canaanites Phonikes, which later became the Roman Ponus. This is where we get the word Punic. So, you might be wondering, who exactly were these Canaanites? Archaeologists typically use the term for the Bronze Age people of the Levant, before 1200 BCE. Their Iron Age descendants, especially along the coast, are known as Phoenicians. Yet, more recently, Canaanite might also include some inland Iron Age kingdoms, like the Philistines and the Israelite kingdoms of Israel and Judah, whose people share a similar heritage. There's no doubt that Ammonites, Moabites, Israelites, and Phoenicians were all Canaanites. While each group forged their own unique identity, the roots of their culture were the same. What made Canaanite civilization tick? Climate was their key. They thrived during long periods of stable weather, broken up by short bursts of climate change. They were masters of adaptation, their coastal cities becoming hubs of trade between empires like Egypt, Mesopotamia, and the Hittites, while inland areas focused on agriculture. This duality, coast versus interior, eventually shaped their mythology, with their storm god, Baal-Hadad, or Teshub, often clashing with Yam, god of the sea. Early Canaanite life was defined by small, walled towns surrounded by farms. They grew olives, grapes for wine, pistachios, and lots of wheat and barley. Farmers practiced transhumance, moving their sheep with the seasons, taking advantage of both wet season pastures and post-harvest stubble fields. The Gezer calendar, even the biblical cycle of festivals, reflect this agricultural rhythm. But when the climate shifted, their system could collapse. Commercial farming gave way to subsistence crops, and townspeople became year-round nomadic herders. Tribal leaders might emerge, raiding settlements and rewarding followers, but alliances were fragile, often dissolving if fortunes changed. Some scholars believe this nomadic, tribal lifestyle is reflected in the Bible's tales of the patriarchs. Canaanite culture was surprisingly unified, especially considering its long history. Urban elites ruled both the city-states and surrounding countryside. Burial practices evolved, hinting at a belief in the afterlife. But periods of turmoil and empire building, like the Hyksos invasion or the Bronze Age collapse, would disrupt trade networks. Yet, as stability returned, commerce resumed. The Philistines and Phoenicians flourished along the coast, while new trade routes snaked inland, giving rise to secondary Canaanite cities. Sometimes old states, think Philistines, Judah, Israel, tried to control this trade with mixed success. Prosperity, sadly, had a downside. It attracted powerful neighbors. Egypt, Assyria, Babylonia, Persia, and even the Greeks and Romans. These empires brought political control, hefty taxes, and tariffs. Over time, coupled with unsustainable farming practices, this often led to another cycle of climate-induced collapse. The final fall of Canaanite civilization happened gradually, as the Greco-Roman world absorbed the region. Western Aramaic, a language of the Canaanites, survived in small Syrian villages, while Phoenician Canaanite faded around 100 CE. While Canaanite cities rose and fell, empires marched across their lands. The Babylonians conquered the region, eventually falling to Cyrus the Great of Persia. In a remarkable act, Cyrus allowed exiled Jews to return home to Jerusalem in 538 BCE. This return sparked a religious transformation. The clergy revised their beliefs, creating the foundations for modern Judaism. But empires weren't done with Canaan. Alexander the Great swept in, bringing Hellenistic culture with him. After his death, the Seleucids held power until the Maccabean Revolt. This uprising, led by Judas Maccabeus, freed the region and ushered in the Hasmonean dynasty. Though celebrated for securing religious freedom, it's possible the revolt was actually a civil war between pro-Hellenistic and traditional Jewish factions, with the Seleucids merely taking sides. The Hasmoneans flourished, sometimes clashing with their wealthy neighbor, the Nabatean kingdom. This caught the eye of a rising power, Rome. Pompey claimed the region in 63 BCE for the Roman Republic. Later, under Augustus Caesar, it became known as Roman Judea. A series of Jewish-Roman wars devastated the land. In 136 CE, Emperor Hadrian, tired of the conflict, banished all Jews from the region, renaming it Syria Palestina. This exile, a culmination of centuries of conflict, further obscured the identity of the land's original inhabitants. The Canaanites, whoever they were, faded under the waves of conquerors hungry for this crucial trade hub. Control over Canaan meant wealth, a prize empires battled for relentlessly. By the 4th century CE, as the Byzantine Empire held sway, the name Canaan referred to just a sliver of land along the Mediterranean coast, roughly modern-day Lebanon. The legacy of Canaan is a tangled one, a homeland to some, a promised land to others, a battleground for empires. It ultimately became a place where identities were lost and reshaped. If you enjoyed this journey through the land of Canaan, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more captivating history content. Let us know in the comments what ancient land you'd like us to explore next.